Good morning, this is Angela with Permaculture. It's a chilly October morning and I've just finished the poultry chores. I'm standing underneath a quince tree here. She doesn't produce that much fruit for me, but that's okay. I still really love her. She's beautiful. Speaking of beauty, let me show you something that I found this morning behind my French sorrel. One last Munstead wood rose. This is a David Austin rose. Smells lovely. Not as great of a pollinator food because it's difficult for the bees to get down into the middle, but it's just a stunner. I've talked before about how in permaculture there can be an overemphasis on function over beauty, and I would say please don't divorce the two. If something is beautiful and brings you joy and gets you out in the garden, it's got to function. So I grow lots of things that I think some folks would say have no other job than to be beautiful and therefore shouldn't be in a permaculture garden because they're not producing fiber or food or medicine. I totally disagree with that, and I think that you shouldn't feel guilty if you need to or enjoy or make space for beautiful flowering things in your garden, or even beautiful structural things. So as we move along here, I've pruned this gumi berry heavily. You can see I've limbed it up quite a bit. I would like to get it going up and over and create a little bit of an arch here. Things are starting to go to sleep. I finished tying up all my raspberries here. There's a few quince I've forgotten to pick. I'll get to them later. Put them in a dinner with maybe a roast chicken. So as we step into this part of the garden, I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind. So I live in the United States, and obviously we have a very important election impending, not just nationally, but my local elections here are really important as well. And I think I feel like there has been quite a bit of apprehension and fear and insecurity, all justified and rightly so, because we're at this really pivotal time as a country, and with the pandemic, we're at a pivotal time with our entire world, and folks feel real scared about how radically things can be shifting. And I think permaculture can speak to that. So I've seen a lot of folks being drawn into issues of homesteading and prepping and permaculture, gardening, folks getting into chicken keeping for the first time, feeling like if they have a little bit more control over their food supply, they can feel a little bit more secure in a world that feels real unsteady, and where there doesn't feel like there is very much security at all, where there's a lot of unknowns. And I think permaculture can speak into that. And I think it's important to talk about the issues of resilience and what permaculture has to say as folks are getting into realizing that their future, particularly in a capitalist driven system where they're reliant on a paycheck and they're reliant on an industrial food chain that can fall apart very rapidly, and they're wanting to be more self-sufficient because they feel that will give them more security. I think it's really important to look at what permaculture says about that. As we go back through the garden here, walking along the edge of this bed, my strawberries are creeping out from this blue bottle border out into the path, which reminds me of the permaculture principle of produce no waste, and also the permaculture ethic of share the surplus. I'm going to be collecting up all these runners, and I list them on Craigslist for other folks who might want strawberry ground cover. I try to always share my surplus plants. If nobody wants them, then they go into the compost and they become food for my other plants, but better to share them first. You can see here my garden beds are all being put to bed for the winter. These are my annual veggie beds, even though I have annual veggies lots of places in the garden because I tuck them in everywhere, but my tomatoes are all gone and peppers are all gone. working on mulching and amending them. So in permaculture, we are looking at building a resilient lifestyle. And I think with the amount of political and health and food chain insecurity and instability we are looking at right now, it's important to look to what permaculture says. The design system of permaculture was made for resilient and regenerative living for all people in all places, because it is site-specific and you adapt it to your circumstances. So when folks are seeing the cracks in the system, they're seeing how the industrial model of doing things, the profit-driven, consumptive model of doing things, is just not sustainable. And when any disruption comes along, politically or health-wise, it causes the system to begin to crumble. We need to look for resilient systems, and resilience is your bounce back factor. It's how well does your system, how well does your community recover from a disturbance? How well does it recover from crises? And when I see folks looking at becoming more self-sufficient, I think it's really important to remember that permaculture is about the connectedness of all things. It's about not independence, but interdependence. It's about designing to integrate rather than segregate. It's designing to have communities where people work together. It's designing to have communities where people integrate with nature, where we get the most out of nature and we give the most back. So I think as we're looking at these politically really uncertain times, even if elections come out the way we want them to, or cures are discovered, those are short-term things. So while they can have devastating long-term consequences if they come out in a way that is not conducive to sustainability and to justice and to regeneration, an election cycle can have lasting consequences, but it also can have really short-term consequences because we're only 4 years from the next election cycle, right? But permaculture is permanent. It's about permanent changes to the way humans live. And that provides us with security, and it provides us with abundance in a way that a political system never can, and in a way that helps us bounce back really rapidly from difficult circumstances. My persimmon is just thinking about turning colors. A few days here, I'll come down and show y'all. It's going to be gorgeous. Nothing like a persimmon in the fall. Hello, chickens. So I just want to encourage y'all as you're thinking about all of the upheaval right now and all of the uncertainty, to realize that the solutions are not short-term. Yes, we need to make right choices in terms of choices that are equitable and choices that are sustainable with our voting, with our consumption, with our choosing the way we do business with other people. But also we need to look for long-term big changes. And I really feel like if we look at permaculture, the design system of permaculture speaks to making changes that buffer us, that protect us, that make us more resilient. So when these blips occur, we are able to adapt, and we are able to bounce back, and we are shielded from the full effects of them. Right now we live in a system that is built on consumption, that's built on a lack of sustainability. And so when we get into a crisis, we have no bounce back factor whatsoever. And I feel like so much of the stress we're all enduring right now is because of ideological issues and because of real strains that are happening, real stressors, real difficult issues, real consequential things. But that if we were to change the way we structured our ways of living and interacting with each other, we could radically change how much stress, how much risk we all face with these kinds of issues. So those are just some thoughts that I have at the moment as I'm out in the garden and thinking about getting my ballot and sitting at the dining room table and voting this morning. Please think about, what does permaculture have to do with what we're facing right now? And how is it more important than just planting a garden, which is great. Please plant your garden for next spring. Please be planning now for that. But think about how permaculture is not just prepping, it's not gardening, it's a design system, and how the intentional, sustainable, regenerative design elements in permaculture could make us all more secure, make us all able to weather storms more easily, and help us relate to each other in a way that I think we really struggle to now, at least in my country, so that we can be community minded and we could be looking for solutions that benefit everybody instead of solutions that benefit profit and consumption. We look for solutions that benefit people now and benefit future generations. So I'm going to go in, get out my ballot, start voting. I'll drive it into the drop box at the library later today. Hope you all are staying safe. Please, please vote. I'll be back with more from the garden as fall goes on. Lots and lots still to do. Take care.